We are now just a month away from the NFL season, and we spent the past weeks drinking from the fire hose of training camp news. There's nobody in the industry better to help us separate the signal from the noise than Rotoworld's Pat Doherty. Let's find out whether you should be buying the dip or the rise on the biggest market movers in the fantasy football landscape. This is ADP chasing. Let's go.
Pat Fryer Helmo.
This is why I'm hot.
Anita Handjob.
Fix your site.
Jamar. Alpha play chase.
Are you kidding me? Kadarius Toney?
You can't handle the heat.
It looks like we're finally at this point. You're right.
Welcome, everybody, to the first August edition of ADP Chasing. We started this back in February, I think. We started it way too early, but anyways, we're joined today. Normal crew, except we got Gretch here subbing in for Davis, and also joined by RotoPat of Rotoworld. Pat, how's your August been going? You've been grinding athletic articles. How's your sort of training camp news reading going?
It's been going well, but my life has been forever changed since the Colt McCoy pointing thing. That's kind of changed things around here. That never had a podcast with a bigger reaction than we got to Johnny Venerable kind of blowing the lid
Can
off.
you tell the story again, just in case there's someone who hasn't heard? And
That was incredible.
because everyone wants to hear it again, even if they have.
The Cardinals are doing reps with Colt McCoy. You know, they're starting quarterback, but he doesn't throw, he points. So when he drops back and when someone's open, he points at them, and that's where he would have thrown the 30-yard completion were he able to throw.
We're the starting quarterback able to throw
Yeah.
a football.
The crazy thing is I like reposted one of those clips to Twitter, and I got people like angry in my mentions being like, this is completely normal that like the first team quarterback is just pointing at people. Like clearly you've never watched a football practice before. And I'm like, I don't think it's normal at all. Like,
It's not.
like what are you
I'm
saying?
gonna go in your replies and just quote retweet some of those guys and goes, this guy knows ball.
Yeah, Sam, I saw you tweet correctly that there are apocalyptic vibes emanating out of Arizona Cardinals training camp. So
Yeah,
not just
it's everything.
Yeah.
Everything from Cardinals camp too. It's like the camera angles are really weird. It's like super like zoomed out, like just
Yeah, well,
silence,
they're
too. Like,
practicing
everything
on their-
about it is just
Yeah, and they're like practicing on their real field, which just makes it feel weird. Like they're just in their stadium since it's 129 degrees in Phoenix, so they can't practice anywhere than
Oh, they're
indoor.
not even using the practice
Yeah,
field.
they might be for some things, but one of the infamous pointing clips was in the actual stadium. So yeah, just to having Cardinals having a normal one.
Well, Gretch, welcome back to ADP Chasing. I think it's been a while since you've been on. How was your weekend? I heard you drove down to Oregon, get some more drafts in. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Weekend was good, busy. It's that time of year. A lot of writing over on the Signals newsletter. I can't do the Davis voice. I don't have the wig like Pete does, but I'm glad. I've always wanted to sub for Davis. It just feels great. I'm gonna bring some hot takes today.
Well, yeah, we'll be talking about plenty of Chiefs players, so you'll get a chance to channel your inner Davis Matic. Let's just dive into it, guys. We got a lot of camp news to discuss. I think compared to normal shows, we're going to be focused just on risers and fallers on this show. So what we're going to do is sort of talk about the biggest risers and fallers and then walk through the camp news that sort of, or whatever the news cycle is that's sort of causing these players to either rise or fall in ADP. So the first one that jumps out here, Jalin Hyatt is the biggest riser by percentage change in ADP and raw change in ADP over the past week. He was going, sort of almost undrafted at pick 202, has risen 2 rounds in the last week. So that's a pretty big rise up to pick 179. What's basically caused this, I think a couple things. One, just camp highlights. Jalin Hyatt, obviously super fast. He looks good playing in shorts, sprinting down the football field. And 2, he is getting some first team reps with the Giants in practice, which is interesting. Start with you, RotoPat. curious what your thoughts are on the Giants wide receivers core and Jalin Hyatt as well.
Isn't a lot of this been with Tyrod Taylor? Actually, he's going by Tyrod again. Isn't a lot of this like with Tyrod Taylor was kind of my first thought. I think some of the the gifts I've seen, like Tyrod hitting Jalin Hyatt for another bomb, as Daniel Jones talks to the press corps about he's going to throw even shallower in 2022, 2023, whatever year it is. And that was my first impression. I feel like every time I see a tweet about Jalin Hyatt, it's also in reference to Tyrod Taylor, or is that my imagination?
I think that was true for a time because the reports out of minicamp and stuff was that he was with the third team offense, and then we have the narrative with these Dayball kind of move is to bring rookies along slowly, and Slayton and him seem like very kind of overlapping in their skill sets, and Slayton is sort of a trusted veteran, and so it's just like seemed like he was going to get brought along slowly. But today I was actually reading in the Athletic. Quote from this article. It says Hyatt has proved to be fast at everything, including moving up the depth chart. Hyatt, who spent time during the break before camp working with quarterback Daniel Jones, earned more reps with the starters after repeatedly burning the second team defense for long touchdowns. The big playability continued with the starters as Jones and Hyatt connected for 2 deep touchdowns in Thursday's practice. So I feel like this is starting to be like a genuine drumbeat, like a dude they kind of intended to bring it along slowly, and he's sort of speeding up their plans a little bit. I would say he's still probably a late season bet, but the odds of him coming on down the stretch appear to be getting better.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention, I believe Dov, the man known as Dov, circulated the clip of Daniel Jones hitting him for a bomb over the weekend. And I thought it was a bit of a Tua type throw. Like, man, he really wound up for a long time on that pass, like longer than you can normally wind up in a real NFL game. But did hit him for a deep bomb where he was falling backwards. And yeah, he has begun to. I think his like overall reps with the first team offense are still. He's like 9th in first team reps or something. But he is getting first team reps. They're no longer just
9th among wide receivers.
I mean, I'm exaggerating a bit.
Sterling Shepard and Cole Beasley and all those dudes.
I know they have a million receivers.
Yeah, Gretch. I think I meant more 9th in targets with the first team offense, not 9th in reps. They do, a lot of. I think
Giants that's actually close to. Yeah, that's close to accurate. There's
still a slot.
Sorry, guys. I think something's going on with my Wi-Fi, but
we can hear you fine.
Yeah,
you seem normal. You just seem like you're freaking out over nothing to us.
Okay.
But I was trying to make the joke several times that the Giants need 1 or 2 more slot receivers.
Yeah, they do. They definitely need some more slot receivers. I'm concerned about their ability to.
They're signing Jarvis
roles.
Landry any day.
Jarvis Landry was spotted at Newark International.
This is no joke. Julian Edelman was spotted at the Giants practice.
Come on.
It's not a joke. So
come on, man.
No, I'm not. I'm actually not joking. Like, I think not as like a tryout, but he was actually physically there.
He must be. He Daboll's got that.
Daniel,
Sam, you might want to close and reopen.
Delay.
Yeah, your delay.
I'm going to leave and come back.
Yeah.
Do you think Davis is on a delay all the time?
Dable, he wants some of that Big Pat's energy. Everyone forgets. Not everyone forgets. A lot of people remember, actually, that Brian Dable is a Pat's disciple. But he's most recently, of the Bills. But yeah, maybe he's just behind on doing the things that all horrible former Pat's assistants do. Like wow, Brian Dable's first year with the Giants actually hired people that didn't work for Bill Belichick. Now year 2, he's like, all right, let's get in all the Belichick people now.
I think Daboll, we need to get to the bottom of his discipleship, because is he a Belichick disciple or a Saban disciple?
I know. It is confusing. It's admittedly, I don't know what the canon is on that. We need to go to Bella Saban wiki and really, really, sort through the mythology.
I think
there.
he's a Saban disciple because it's the success followed Saban.
I think he's considered a Belichick disciple. Although I think he was with Saban all the way back at Michigan State, in the 90s. It's like a sordid tale.
I'm learning a lot about Brian Dable so far.
It's a sordid tale. I believe he spent time with Mangini. So
okay. It is sordid.
There's a lot going on there with Brian Dable.
We're playing Remember Some Guys.
Gretch, I'm curious how you.
Curious how I what?
Yeah. Gretch, curious how you're. This is a disaster. There's something going on with my Wi-Fi. I'm trying my best.
You're like
Gretch, how are you approaching Hyatt rounds of drafts?
I haven't been taking a lot of him. I've been avoiding the Giants for the most part, just out of this idea that I'm quite a bit more narrow, I think, with my late round wide receivers than most drafters. I'm not really just like mixing in guys to stack. I feel like, you definitely want bringbacks, like if you're doing like a Rams stack. But I don't think you have to have them. I don't think any of the research I've read is like, you have to have them as a precursor to win necessarily. And so, like, if it's not a great bet, then it's not a great bet. There's, I think, almost a certainty that one of these Giants receivers is going to beat ADP. And everything you guys are saying about Hyatt's kind of drumbeat does have me a little excited. Like, I think going forward, I will take a little bit more Hyatt. But for the most part, to me, it's been such a cloudy situation that I haven't wanted to prioritize it. I also haven't taken a ton of Daniel Jones, so that's maybe part of it as well.
So I wrote an article that came out last week on Hyatt was one of the guys I used as an example. It's just like kind of a little bit of like a tactic I thought was kind of interesting in these Week 17 type formats, the Best Ball Mania type playoff contest, where if you're taking Hyatt, right, you're not necessarily even betting on the Giants offense. Like if you're taking Slayton, you're betting on the Giants offense to some degree because like Slayton's sort of a status quo bet on him maintaining starter reps. Daniel Jones is putting up a lot of points early in the season. That's good for Slayton. Hyatt can benefit from like chaos and, the depth chart just getting reshuffled. And so like the Giants don't necessarily even need to have that great of a season. You just are kind of betting on him, and he is still priced, even though he's moving up. He's still priced as a late round dart throw that you really just want to come on for the playoff weeks. Those guys are pretty interesting as bringbacks. Like if you're trying to get more Hyatt in, maybe try to get him in on Matthew Stafford teams where you really are just betting on that Week 17 bringback potential. If the Giants are a disaster before the Rams push them in Week 17, who cares?
Yeah, which also gets to your point earlier that Hyatt could be a good late season. I mean, he feels like if there's a little bit of drumbeat here, feels to me like a really nice one of those rookie late season bets. We know rookies score more later in the year, so that's I like that take a lot. He's somebody I want to mix in. One thing I do want to note, if on Pat's comment about Daniel Jones basically saying he's going to throw shorter. I mean, I think one of the biggest.
He didn't really say that, by the way. It's just
okay. I was gonna say if you were serious about it because I couldn't tell.
Yeah, and no, sorry, and I would be someone to trust on that since I read the news all day. I did not mean to mislead you there.
but I will even if he hasn't said that, it's a valid. There's some truth to the joke, obviously, and it's an interesting point because I just you just mentioned I had Sam that long drive to Oregon. I finished listening to Jordan Rodriguez's awesome Playmakers series, 5-part series at The Athletic. Incredible. I mean, I do think one of the things we are missing as a fantasy industry is how the defenses played in 2022 and in 2021 and how ADOS came down. You have Robert Saleh, I think in episode 4, maybe episode 5 of that series, literally saying our goal is to stop explosive plays. Like he's straight up saying, we want you to matriculate the ball down the field, which is one of the things that, we speculated about, I think, in the fantasy industry. I know Sean and I talked about it a ton stealing bananas last year. Like that's the goal of these defenses right now, this cover 2 shell and the way that they're doing things is to stop explosive plays and make you beat them underneath. Jalin Hyatt and these types of prospects for me are a little bit thinner bets as a result of the atmosphere they're coming into in the 2022 NFL or 2023 NFL over like a multi-decade span. Like we're coming into an era where defenses' focus is to stop explosives. This is an explosive play receiver. So I'm like a little bit more intrigued by like the upside profile of Wan'Dale Robinson, for example. That's the Giant that I have taken on some bringbacks. I don't love him. There's a lot of slots.
I took Robinson a lot, but then I was like, they're signaling this dude might not play this year.
They literally signed Cole Beasley. I mean,
yeah, once they signed Cole Beasley, I was like, oh, Robinson might be a 2024 play. Like I'm starting to get pretty nervous about the injury and just how many slot receivers they have on the roster. Like, it could be a signal, I think.
Yeah. So maybe it's the Giants isn't the right way of making this point, but Hyatt in general, and just like there's several other deep threats where like I kind of like the profiles, but I'm reminding myself like these are the types of players, and they succeed in the types of areas that NFL defenses are trying to take away right now, and it's a copycat league, and all the defenses are doing.
Yeah, the car was thrown in reverse last year, Gretch. Like you said, it's not just anecdotal. I mean, we know empirically from advanced stats, from just the raw stats, the car was already kind of beginning to idle, and like the big play thing was like officially thrown in reverse last year. And yeah, Jalin Hyatt could be like an MVS, like cannon fodder type guy. Like your whole job is to absorb like fire down the field, and you're not going to get the ball. Especially since Daniel Jones now under back-to-back coaching staffs, one a horrible coaching staff and then one a very good coaching staff, still just does not like to throw deep. Even though he always grades out well at doing it, he doesn't do it. He doesn't like to do it.
I think the cover 2 thing is definitely like real. Like there was an uptick in cover 2, but I feel like I remember Kevin Cole pushing back on just like how much more, and like it actually feels to me like it might be potentially kind of an overblown thing.
Well, Crane, it's also like it's not like it's the most difficult coverage look to beat. Like teams knew how to do it. They didn't have to do it
decades
for like 2 decades.
Yeah. The other thing is I think like if you're the Bengals, if you're looking at the Bengals and you're like, I think Irv Smith might see some dump off targets because they're just gonna. Then I agree with that. But with like teams like the Giants, like I think Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley are probably going to run together a lot. Like they were using Daniel Jones more as like a mobile quarterback. And the trick with like what Daboll's going to be trying to do is get them out of the cover 2 by running it and then take shots when they are. So with a guy like Hyatt, right? You're playing,
but defenses aren't getting out of it. That's like we keep talking about this on fantasy pods, but like defenses aren't rolling out of the cover 2. They're staying in it. That's why we had teams run or like throw at like record-breakingly low levels, or also high levels last year. The Bucs
I might have to dig into this because like I think that's happening to like the Chiefs and stuff, but I don't think like you're playing like why would you play like why would you just be like I can't let Daniel Jones beat me deep when he's mobile, or Justin Fields beat me deep when he's mobile. Like these guys, they stacked it. Like the Falcons faced a lot of stacked boxes last year because they had Marcus Mariota. Like he wasn't seeing those cover 2 shells the same way these other guys are.
By the way, the Giants, how many receivers do you think they have on their 90-man roster right now? You're allowed to carry 90 players during training
12.
camp. They do have 12. Sam is correct. 12 receivers. That does not include Wandale, who's not on the active roster since he's on the PUP list. And so they've got 13 if they've got Wandale. Seems like a lot of players at one position when you're allowed 90 total players.
Yeah, and especially because Derek Waller's going to split out some. I know. Like you went and got a tight end who's going to split out and play wide receiver.
They're saying that too. You were mentioning that a while back, Gretch, and I've seen reports now that they do have sets with Bellinger at tight end and Waller moving around the formation. So like on top of everything, you're gonna have to deal with Darren Waller playing wide receiver, which
their
is
best wide receiver isn't even one of those 13 guys. Like that was their big wide receiver addition as a tight end.
Colin Johnson's also gotten some buzz.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
They let their best.
Last thing I'll say, and then let's move on to Justin. Yeah. Last thing I'll say, and then we'll move on to Justyn Ross. Jalin Hyatt does have less catches than Cole Beasley in 11 on 11 team drills through 9 practices. So that doesn't seem like the hype is fully justified, but I do kind of get it for the late season breakout.
I do want to circle back on that too high.
Let's talk through Justyn Ross. Oh yeah.
Real quick, Nick makes a great point about the play callers thing, is that they're showing these 2-eye looks, they're rotating post-snap. The defenses are doing more adjustments after the snap, making quarterbacks read things. That was the main point of play callers. It's not as simple as, they're not getting out of too high. The whole point was that they're not doing what they're showing you. They're not as regulated, as Sean McVay called it in the play callers series. They are less regulated. They're moving around more. But my point is their philosophy is to take away space, to take away explosives. And that's, I mean, it's going to impact the 2023 season in a pretty big way.
Before I know we have to move on, but and I also know this show is like we're in like the heart of best ball territory. But Crane, it was still astonishing to hear you talking about stacking Jalin Hyatt and Matthew Stafford. It was genuinely astonishing, and like with a total straight face, because it does make sense. That's why you're here. But it was still astonishing.
Well,
sorry.
Yeah. I guess I'm going to try to dig in on the too high thing a little bit more, Ben. But like my big pushback there is just like I have to imagine that like teams are scheming for Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen pretty differently than for some of these like more mobile quarterbacks that they're just not as afraid of with the deep shot stuff. And they are more afraid of their legs.
They are, but I don't think it's as simple. I wasn't trying to come down on you necessarily, but I've heard that a lot where it's like, oh, yeah, because they're mobile, they're going to get more one-high looks or whatever. And it's not that simple, I don't think.
Maybe not pre-snap because they're rotating. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe because of rotations and stuff. It probably does open up the downfield passing to have a mobile QB to some degree, but I don't think it's going to be as simple as that. Anyway, we should move on to the Chiefs. Sam's itching to get some Justyn Ross talking.
Yeah, I mean, we normally spend 45 minutes in the Giants wide receiver room, so it's good to keep it at 20 today. Let's talk about another team that has seemingly 12 wide receivers that are all getting hype in camp. The Kansas City Chiefs. Justyn Ross is up a round and a half, up 8% in ADP. He is now getting drafted in almost every single underdog draft in around the 16th or 17th round right now. This, again, it's kind of a similar story to Hyatt. There's word he's getting reps with the first team, not necessarily a starter with the first team, but is getting reps with the first team. And the Chiefs Twitter account is just relentless in sending us these Justyn Ross highlights. I don't know if the guy who manages this has some Justyn Ross dynasty shares he's trying to offload, but man, the Justyn Ross hype from Kansas City's main account is just absurd. So I don't know. I'm curious, I guess, starting with you, Pat, what are your thoughts on Justyn Ross? Do you think this is legitimate, or are we just getting bored at this point in the offseason?
So I'm going to assume you meant this Pat, me, and I will start talking. And
yeah, you're Pat for this episode.
Yeah,
I've noticed some of the highlights now do feature pads being worn, so that's good. And it is interesting. It's veering into drumbeat territory because it's Chiefs media. It's been some teammates. It's been the big kahuna himself, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, this was always the thesis of the Justyn Ross play, was it not, for the Chiefs and fantasy managers? It wasn't going to be like a one-year thing. He had to red shirt. And he was always like, when we talked about Justyn Ross last year, it was like 2023. And we know when that usually happens, we just like never hear from the player again. Like the next year, like they're just out of the league. But Justyn Ross is actually living up to the thesis of the play. And he's doing step one, which is to create lots of training camp content. A lot of people never move on to step two. But as much as I want to joke about it and like not get excited about it, like he's checking the box. You can't like poke a hole in the argument so far. Like he's doing, as of August 7th, he's doing everything he needs to do through the first 10 days of training camp to like maybe actually become a thing.
The guy that was this player in Chiefs camp at this time last year was Isaiah Pacheco, and there was a lot of smoke behind, or a lot of fire behind that smoke. So I mean, it is interesting to hear this type of buzz from a team that gave us the same type of buzz from a no-name, or not no-name, but a less heralded player last year, and then followed through on that.
Gretch, I just got a really galaxy-brain idea while you were talking, and I'm gonna share. Like, I'm gonna share this take. Like I actually do maybe believe this, that maybe the Chiefs, since they're just so good, two Super Bowls went in the past 4 years, maybe they don't care about cloak and dagger training camp stuff anymore. Whereas, like a lot of teams would try to confuse the issue, like, oh, Justyn Ross, yeah, I mean, he's playing, yeah, he's on the field, but like, that doesn't mean anything. Like the coaching staff would like do everything to downplay it. They did everything to upplay Isaiah Pacheco last year, and yeah, maybe the Chiefs are like so confident, like they don't think they have to like try to keep Justyn Ross a secret or try to keep that kind of they're like freely hyping Justyn Ross.
Or maybe it's like they want to build his confidence is like a bigger priority than like keeping it a secret, because who cares? We have Patrick Mahomes. We don't care who's playing.
Exactly.
Really.
I've tried to figure out new ways to bury MVS every episode, and so last time I was on a podcast with Pat, I cited Open Score using all the wide receivers going back to 2017. I'll mix it up this year and include this episode include the tight ends going back to 2017. So Open Score, ESPN's player tracking metric, has 648 wide receiver and tight end seasons going back to 2017. MVS last year was ranked 620th of those 648 seasons in Open Score last year. And then there's also the yards after catch stuff that's horrendous for him. Out of those 600, it's actually 649. There's a tie for 648. So 649 seasons, MVS was 638th in yards after catch per the player tracking data. So if you're not getting open, you're not doing stuff after the catch, it might be bad.
We're talking about Ross. Why is that was anyone making a case for MVS?
Because I think Ross's path goes directly through MVS. Okay. MVS is like seen as this, well, hey, he's going to get out there. He's going to be running the routes. Like maybe not. Like I think if you're taking MVS, I would be reconsidering it right now with this Ross site, because Ross is a taller outside wide receiver. Maybe he's taking stuff from Justyn Ross to begin with, but like if Toney gets back at some point this year and can actually play, then he would be playing over Justin Watson as well. And they're either running probably Sky Moore or Richie James out of the slot. So if Ross is out there and Toney's out there, MVS is going to be. And by the way, MVS was rotating off last year as well. He didn't have like a locked in route rate even last year. So I don't know. This Ross stuff at the very least is making me extremely concerned about MVS.
No one did, right? Like as you're saying that, I was thinking through last year they rotated a lot, and they'll probably will again this year. But I like that take that MVS. He wound up running the most routes in this passing game last year, other than Kelsey, and that could not happen this year. He could be like third or something. He could come down pretty easily.
Yeah. The numbers too. Like what I'm wondering with Ross is, he's getting all this hype, but I still think there is a question if he makes the roster, right? Because let's assume for a second that Toney is healthy enough to be on the roster week 1, which maybe isn't a fair assumption, but just go with me for a second. Then if you say Toney's locked into a roster spot, you say, Rashee Rice, Sky Moore, obviously second round picks the last 2 years, they're locked into roster spots. You have Justin Watson and MVS both making guaranteed money locked into roster spots. Then it starts just to get tough. Like typically teams only will only carry 6 wide receivers on an active roster and maybe have 5 active for game days. So the thing with Ross is I'm just like, who loses out and doesn't make the roster? If he does, it could be Toney's just injured and they stash Toney on IR, and that's sort of how they do it. But yeah, I think
that's
right.
That's the kind of move that they will make. They won't cut Ross, not after this type of hype and this and his career and the ways that, Pat, you could talk to this way better than me, but the Chiefs and the way Andy Reid does stuff, like he loves like these positive stories, right? Like he kind of falls in love with them a little bit, right?
No, yeah, he kind of does. It is interesting from both of you, though. Like Sam is right, but I mean, it could be like a surprise cut. I mean, we didn't even mention Richie James.
He could be cut.
Maybe Justin Watson, even though they love him, like the staff loves him. Mahomes seems to love him. He has only been with the team like 1 year. Maybe he's been with the team 2 years. I can't remember.
What are the practice squad rules now? Because could they just stash him there? Like no one's taking him.
Who, Justin Watson?
Yeah,
they probably could. Richie James even could maybe, if you wait till late enough in camp to like cut him, they could maybe even stash him on the practice squad. Because he's like 27.
He got no money.
Yeah, he's kind of become a journeyman. But it is weird, which is also, this is like a little Justyn Ross negative. There's been a hype for a lot of random Chiefs. Like not as much for Richie James and Justin Watson, but like, the Chiefs, they love Justin Watson. What he brings, it's always stuff that has nothing to do with like being on the field. What he brings to the whiteboard. Really good friends with Mahomes, and they never mention at all like he's getting open all the time or something like that. But there's going to be by definition, by necessity, like a surprising cut in the Chiefs receiver corps.
Well, or I mean, yes, there might be one, but I like what Rohin's saying here too. And apologies if I got the name wrong, but Chiefs beat reporter projected Toney starting on IR. As you were talking through this, and as you were doing that, Sam, I was like, oh, Toney's definitely not starting on the active roster. They're going to stash him. They're going to say they need time, whether it's PUP or whatever they do. They're going to stash him.
Well, they got a little screwed because he didn't start camp on the PUP list. So, like, Putting him on the pup would have been by far the best. I guess the IR rules are pretty liberal at this point, though. So there's probably a pretty good chance he starts on IR. It used to be more punitive if you wanted to start on IR. Now it doesn't really matter. So almost no chance he's on the active roster week 1. You're right, Gretch.
Yeah. And by the way, Sam's right about MVS's guaranteed money. They can't move on from him. Somehow he has a $10.5 million cap hit this year, which is just absurd.
It's a lot.
Yeah, they can't really move. I do think he can get phased out on MVS. Like, I kind of agree with you, Pat, that I think a lot of people are touting MVS as like, oh, his role is locked and he's so safe. Yes, he did run a lot of routes last year, but I made this point last week in the podcast. You look at week 10 on, Justin Watson actually outsnapped MVS from week 10 on last year. Not in terms of routes, but in terms of snaps. So that's just a sign to me that, like, hey, maybe Justyn Ross and Justin Watson actually could both pass MVS. And then it's kind of just like, what do you do here on this roster, MVS? You could become much more of a rotational sort of 20-30% route rate deep threat versus last year where he was more like 60-70%. Like, I think his role could be cut in half. I wouldn't be surprised at all. But the younger players passing him there.
One more note on his contract, because I knew they could have moved on after last year. It says over the cap, if on the roster on the third day of 2023 league year, $6.44 million will be fully guaranteed. So they made a decision this year to keep him this offseason for $6.5 million more guaranteed. That's why he's owed $10.5 million. $6.5 million of that was a decision made this year. So interesting.
I'll note with the route rate stuff, he was at 76% last year, which isn't very good for a wide receiver. Marvin Jones was at 76% last year, for example. Kind of a part-time. So it's just like if he goes much further down. So he's not going to get like fully benched. He's not going to get cut. They clearly see it, but he's probably Jalin Hyatt.
He's not good. Yeah.
No, he's just there to stretch.
He's never averaged more than 5 targets per game in a season in his career. Never did in Green Bay, and he didn't last year with the Chiefs. He's not actually like a target.
Well, he's never played with a good quarterback, though.
Yeah, only Hall of Fame quarterbacks for this guy.
Well, there was that one chat.
Someone get MVS a quarterback.
I've pushed back on the too high stuff in some aspects, but I think in this case, that he's a sacrifice to the too high gods. He's just like, oh yeah. Just run deep and take a guy with you, and then we'll do something else.
Let's move on here to talking about Marvin Mims. Maybe a guy we're a little bit more excited about than Hyatt or Ross. We'll see. He's up, obviously, on the kind of sad Patrick and Hamler injuries. You got to really feel for both those guys. They've had terrible luck with injuries throughout their whole career. That does open up a crazy opportunity for him at wide receiver 3. I cited myself here in this picture, but you look at the competition for 3 wide receiver sets in Denver, assuming that Judy and Sutton are locked in as the starting wide receivers. He's competing with Marquez Callaway, Montrell Washington, Kendall Hinton, Little Jordan Humphrey. It's basically Sean Payton.
It's amazing that you bothered to list out Michael Bandy and Taylor.
Well, I couldn't figure out how to rank these. How do you rank these players? I was like,
my favorite thing about doing the Broncos projections this year and looking at their depth chart and some of these names is Sean Payton brought over 3 of his top 6 receivers in receiving yardage from his final year with the Saints, including Marquez Callaway, led that team with 698 yards.
Yes,
and one of his reserve running backs in Toney Jones Jr. Brought over Marquez Callaway, Little Jordan Humphrey, and Adam Troutman, and Toney Jones Jr. All these just random players.
Toney Jones was so bad for the Seahawks last year. They used another day 2 pick on a running back. That's how scarred they were by the Toney Jones experience last year.
I just love Peyton's I want all these crappy players from my 2021 team that wasn't good enough that I quit.
Well, when you put it that way.
Yeah. But, it seems like at least by the end of the year, I don't see any way that Mims doesn't at least have a shot to run routes. It'd be crazy if they didn't give him a chance over Callaway or Little Jordan Humphrey. So I'm pretty excited about him, where he goes in best ball now. I guess start with you, Gretch. Pick 150-ish. That's his range. Do you think he's an exciting pick there?
Did you say me? Sorry, I coughed.
Yeah, Gretch.
Yeah, I do. I think he's one of the best double-digit upside, late season rookie wide receiver plays, right? There's not a ton of profiles in the double-digit rounds that we think at wide receiver have a ton of upside. That's why we talk about, like, you know, the wide receiver window and wide receiver heavy early in drafts and a lot of those philosophies. Mims is a legitimate double-digit round upside profile that could be late in the season somebody who's really hitting. If Peyton gets this thing turned around, if Russell Wilson's a little bit better, there's some concerns in Cortland Sutton's profile. I've still drafted some Sutton, but like there are paths to Cortland Sutton not being great this year or being sacrificed to the two high gods, right? And then it's Judy and maybe Mims, who is a good deep threat as well and could be the guy who sacrificed the two high gods, but maybe he winds up doing more in the intermediate range. I mean, there's like, we don't know a ton of how Peyton's going to use these guys. He used to rotate receivers a lot with the Saints, so there are some, you know, some concerns here as well. But to your point and to your tweet, the competition is not stiff. He has a really good profile. He's a really easy, I think, double-digit upside wide receiver profile is the way that I would put it.
The thing that concerns me with Mims so far, though, is all the hype is still from us. Like, it hasn't been from the coaching staff, hasn't really been from the Broncos media. Injured rookies get treated like very punitively. And I know he's finally back, but they are never happy when like a rookie misses like the first 7 or 8 days. Like, it usually puts you like back like considerably far. He is at least a Peyton draft pick, so that's really good. So Peyton brought all these guys over. He's remembering like one guy after another. He did at least draft Marvin Mims, so he's at least a Peyton guy. I'd be much more concerned if he like was like a second-year guy and wasn't Peyton's guy. And like Sam was saying, like he's gonna have to play. I mean, like almost is going to have to play, but I'm just afraid it could be like a challenge accepted type situation where like Sean Payton likes Marquez Callaway far, far more than the fantasy football community does. But again, you focus on late season a lot, as you should, and almost impossible to see Marvin Mims not being like at least a staple in 3 receiver sets by the end of the season, and probably much sooner, and maybe even in some 2-wide looks. But I have all the hype so far has not been from the people who matter. It's been from people like us.
I'll vouch for that because I tried hard to dig up some Marvin Mims like camp clips or like anything else to put on this slide to say like, oh, Marvin Mims is doing great in camp. There's nothing. I think a lot of that is because he has been injured, but he's been back practicing all of last week, and it's just like radio silence on the Marvin Mims beat report, which could mean nothing, could mean something. I still like betting on him. The one thing I'll add with the Broncos, like I think Mims at pick 150, I'm totally in. If he rises, I've heard people talking about, he should rise to the 120 range. I think there I get pretty nervous. Like back in 2021, thinking about how Sean Payton wants to run this offense, the Saints ran 11 personnel, so 3 wide receiver sets at the 7th lowest rate in the entire NFL back then. They have Dulcich as a starting tight end. They traded for Adam Troutman. They also gave Chris Manhertz, a guy no one talks about in fantasy, but they gave him $3 million guaranteed. He's like, a 30-40% rotational snap player for the Jags last year as a blocker. I think they're going to run like a lot of 2 tight end sets in Denver. I think Sean Payton wants to run the ball. And like, I'm not sure chasing, the 3rd wide receiver on the Broncos is like this incredible bet. I think it's certainly good where he goes now, but I'm a little wary of like, man, I just don't know about betting on Denver's passing game for the, auxiliary options in the 10th or 11th round if he rises that high.
That's a good take.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's my most drafted wide receiver to date. Yeah, he is. He's my 3rd most drafted player.
Man, you look worried as you're saying that.
No, I mean, obviously, a lot of this came at lower prices, so yeah, I'm happy to take him. You mentioned him moving up that far. I think that's definitely possible, but I've been kind of shocked by how little he's moved so far. That in the last week or so, I thought I would be seeing him, in the 140s and stuff. He'll get sniped for me if I try to push him. He goes in the 140s because I'm now taking him in the 140s because I'm sick of getting sniped at like 149 or 150. But I am also sometimes just seeing him when I'm on the clock. I wasn't even planning to take him. Still in that kind of like 160 mid-range, around there. And I guess I'm just a little bit surprised he hasn't moved up quicker. Maybe it is that people expect him seeing the fields in a rotational role because they do run some 12. I think they will, but
it's probably what Sam said too. The hype just hasn't been out there yet, at least from the media, just because he's barely he must just be like getting up to speed basically. And it's been a trap in the past where like a rookie gets injured early in camp. falls behind. There's no hype, and then people just like fall asleep on them, and then they
Odell
are.
Beckham.
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of Odell Beckham type situations, but it is also, I feel like those are still the exceptions where like when a rookie starts hurt, like the year, even if it's like for only a week or two of camp, like a lot of times they're like way more buried than we would like on the early season depth chart.
I wonder with the 3-wide stuff, like I kind of agree that they'll probably run a lot of 12, but I also wonder if like what Peyton was doing at the end of his Saints tenure, I mean, they ran out of wide receivers. Like they just didn't have anybody.
That's true.
I mean,
yeah.
you know, they like Lance Moore used to be like a pretty dynamic fantasy wide receiver, and he was a slot guy. You know, they've had a history of slot receiver production under Peyton. So I don't know. We'll have to see. I do think they'll probably be taking Russ back to some of that Seattle stuff and trying to pound the rock, and like they got to unlock the moon ball. You know, that is a team that needs to be hitting explosives deep, because Russ isn't going to be like matriculating the ball downfield like that's what the run game's for, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just one thing to add on Pat's point that like the trap of projecting the rookie into volume right away, like not to say that this is Jalen Tolbert, but this is the same thing with Jalen Tolbert last year. We're like, there's no like Jalen Tolbert has an easy path to playing. Like, there's no way he's going to play behind Dennis Houston and
Noah Brown. What are you?
Yeah, there's no way they're going to sign T.Y. Hilton in week 16 and play him over Jalen Tolbert, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
They did. So just not to saying I'm out of Mims, but like I do want to I kind of want to see it in the preseason a little bit. I want to see it in the reporting like a little bit before I would be willing to chase him, I think, like higher if like we just get a little bit more backing that like he is actually looking good and we're not just, projecting.
I think he's a strong pick where he's still going. Like I
agree with that.
Mingo, you know, that I'm taking like Van Jefferson's at 140, Michael Gallup's at 137. He was pretty bad last year. Maybe, we're like, hopefully he's better the second year off an ACL tear, even though he has to deal with Brandon Cooks. Like I'll take him over him. But, it's really until if you get to like Darnell Mooney or Jacoby Myers or Zay Jones or Romeo Dobbs, Alan Lazard, like I could still talk myself into them over all those guys, but at least there you're like, these dudes are running routes and, they probably are giving you a couple spike weeks. But until he's up there, I think he's a pretty strong pick.
I agree. Let's move to talking Zay Flowers, continuing the rookie wide receiver trend here on the show. Zay Flowers is up 5 spots from pick 88 to pick 83, so he's going late 7th now pretty consistently. I think a lot of teams with Lamar Jackson at the 3-4 turn are taking Flowers there. He's up, I think, mostly just because Bateman's been missing, and that's led to reports that Flowers is kind of firmly a starter in 2 wide receiver sets. I would note the reports aren't saying that like he's ahead of Bateman. The reports are mostly just saying because Bateman's not here right now, Flowers looks like the starter. I think that's kind of an important.
They're also saying he looks awesome.
They are saying he looks awesome too. Yeah. So he's up because of that. I kind of think I made a mistake. I was, Bateman over Flowers for most of the draft season. I was kind of ignoring the Bateman injury, I think, a little bit too much.
Same.
I wish I had more Flowers at this point, but I'm kind of buying him where he goes in drafts. RotoPat, what are your thoughts on Flowers? Are you excited about him?
Well, my thoughts on Flowers are like very Bateman based, where like they're trying to project positivity on Bateman, but it's still like it's going to be out there soon. Like you can feel it. Like it's going to be soon. I just know it. And that is kind of, I felt like the tenor of the Bateman comments, and just how is he not practicing still? Like it is like kind of shocking. And
is it, he had a issue with his foot where they had to remove one of the screws from this surgery. And then he got a cortisone shot for the discomfort, which is.
I just mean like how I wasn't debating. Like, of course he's not practicing after that, but how is it after how little he played last year and it's August 7th? Like he's still like getting shots and like getting screws removed and that.
Well, the shot. I don't think he's still getting shots. I think he's when you get, as far as I understand it, like there's not like when you get the screw removed, right? That's potentially leading to additional instability or potential for swelling or whatever. So like they're resting him right now. Like rest away. But it's a new
This isn't Greg Roman anymore. It's not a full new coaching staff. It's a new offensive staff, and they're gonna be like, it's a really bad setup for him because it's the new staff, and with the new staff with the shiny new toy in Zay Flowers, who is hitting the ground running and is like creating gifts every day in Ravens camp, where it's kind of like a perfect storm of like negative Rashad Bateman hype, I feel like, and just not going to be a lot of loyalty from the Todd Monken staff to Rashad Bateman. And again, it's August 7th, and they're still basically saying like he's a week away. Kind of like it's like an Elon Musk like update to like next week.
I'm honestly
Cybertrucks are going to be shipped out next week. For sure.
They're
coming.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm honestly fine with it, like because it's coming with a discount on Bateman. I know we're talking Flowers here, but just on the Bateman side, like he's fallen into the 9th round now. Like, cool. Like I'm in. I'm still in. I also want to be in on Flowers though. I was Bateman over Flowers for a while, and then I kind of flipped that because the ADP insisted that I do so. And I was making a point to try to stack Flowers and Bateman with Lamar. That's kind of how I talked myself into Flowers, because I feel, honest to God, like I think if you just take a guy 12 times, like you'll start taking him on his own. Like or maybe the number's even lower. It might be like 7. But like once you take a guy a certain amount of times, you're like,
it's 12 for Pat because he's doing 7 million drafts.
Yeah, it might be 12 for me. It might be 3 for a normal person. But there's something of like, just click the guy's name. If you think you should do it, just do it. Do it a few times, and then you're like, this is a good pick now because I've done it. So
it's like smoking one cigarette, you know.
It is. Yeah. So like I got a taste for Zay Flowers, and I drafted him.
This is a good pick now because I've done it.
That's seriously how your brain works. So
it is. That's like a really like fascinating like insight into like human psychology.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm now pretty much even with the field.
I can think of players that this is true on. Like I wasn't taking. You guys were talking about it recently on the show, but I wasn't taking a lot of Ridley, and I started taking some Ridley, and now I'm like, yeah, I'll consider Ridley in the 3rd round. I'm okay with it.
Because he's a good pick because you've taken him before.
Yeah, I clicked it. I mean, yeah, I've done it. No, I'm with Pat. Karain on liking the Bateman discount. When I did my projections for the Ravens, I felt well. First of all, Bateman only 120 routes last year, but took a step forward with the like yards per out run, targets per out run,
real good yards per out run.
But his ADOT
played football. Sorry, Gretch.
Right? No, fair. He didn't full time.
But his 7 routes,
his ADOT also rose substantially from year 1. It was 9.6, which is below average in year 1. It was 13.2 in year 2. Again, only 120 routes. But I have this depth adjusted racer metric that I use for my efficiency stuff and my projections. Racer being the air conversion ratio. You're taking air yards and turning them to receiving yards instead of like yards per target. It's yards per air yard basically. And Bateman, but I depth adjusted because it's different at different ADOTs. Bateman was efficient at the lower ADOT as a rookie. In terms of his after the target efficiency, didn't earn a ton of targets. Targets per out run wasn't great as a rookie, but his yards per target, which wasn't great, was better when you put it in the context of a lower ADOT, is what I'm trying to say. And then it was also good in year 2 at a higher ADOT. So he was efficient after earning targets at a lower ADOT role and in a higher ADOT role. I like seeing that in receivers over multiple years where this guy can probably win at multiple layers and at multiple depths. We know he was a really good and really productive college player and had a really good, prospect profile in that regard. I think he's a good football player. And so, there's concerns right now in camp and in the big picture, he's not healthy and all those things. In like the smaller picture, but in the big picture, I think he's good. And I want to still be on him like Pat was saying. But I think from the Flowers side of it, I was thinking of him as another one of these rookie guys that's probably, no pun intended, gonna bloom at the end of the season a little bit more. I kind of decided halfway through that it was intended. But with Bateman being out and Flowers getting first team work in August, that's great for him to potentially speed up that timeline in season. Because I thought, early year you're gonna have Odell and Bateman and Andrews as the main guys. Flowers maybe displaces Odell if he's not doing great, or if Bateman's not healthy or whatever happens, Flowers works his way in and he's a guy that's an October, November riser. But I mean, Flowers might now be a lot more involved earlier, and just having good camp with the first team helps that in-season progression, right? So I think these are all positive things for Flowers.
I took Odell Beckham over Bateman in a draft playing the ADP game.
And your soul died.
Yeah, no, seriously, like that is where I'm headed. I took Flowers, I took Odell, and I was like, and I'm going to get Bateman. And like Bateman went, I'm like immediately after took Odell, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. I really like the team. And it was like a great
woke
team.
up with night sweats last night. He was like, God,
I'm so mad at myself for not taking Bateman. Like, he's such a better pick. The other thing I'll note, like, okay, like, oh no, he's falling down the depth chart or whatever. Maybe, but like Flowers is a rookie, so we would expect that his playing time will not be like locked in, 95% route rate, even if he is kind of the starter ahead of Bateman to begin the year. You also have Odell coming off this injury. He's an older guy, like it's kind of same deal. Like I think there's gonna be plenty of routes for a number 3 receiver. But they also are talking about spreading out the defenses a lot more this year, using more 11, using less 12. Devin Duvernay was on the Athletics Ballers list for a recent article by Jeff Zrebiec. We heard some Nelson Aguilar hype early, but that's sort of faded away. I mean, I just think like it would be better if he was locked into 2 wide receiver sets, but that's less important on the Ravens than it used to be, potentially a lot less important. And there's no one is going to challenge this guy for the wide receiver 3 job at the very least. And he's impressed so far in his NFL career to an extent when he's out there. Obviously, the health has been an issue, but he's also a very strong prospect as well. So you're getting a bet on talent play at a pretty cheap price in an offense we think could be pretty explosive.
Yeah. Last thing I'll add on Bateman, well, actually 2 points, one on Bateman, one on Odell. The offense, offense last year, once Bateman got injured, completely collapsed in Baltimore. Like he was so key to what they were doing early in the season. Lamar was putting up massive weeks. He looked like a league winner through the first 5 weeks. Bateman gets injured, and then the offense completely collapses. I know there were other injuries, like that wasn't the sole reason, but I do think he is huge to what this team wants to do and a really good talent. So I have been buying the Bateman dip. I'm going to really be kind of overexposed to him because I had a ton early. The next thing on Odell, I'm drafting Odell, and I'm kind of tired of people like saying, oh, he's the worst wide receiver, click on the board. Like, guys, he's going behind like Tyler Boyd and Jamison Williams and Michael Thomas, like just ahead of Juju and Nico Collins. Like last time we saw him, he was still really good. I think Baltimore
That's
wants
true
to throw it.
On DraftKings, he goes earlier. So
okay,
if you are going to draft, I'd say underdog's better.
I will say some underdog influencers who I won't name have hammered Odell as like the worst pick on the board. And I don't know, man, like he was really good last time we saw him. He's like 2 years removed from the injury. If Bateman just isn't ready, like I don't think they paid Odell $15 million to not give him a chance to be the starting wide receiver on this team. Maybe he doesn't have it anymore, but like, it's not like he's priced up in this like, egregious range for wide receiver. He's wide receiver 52 going off the board. Like I think it's fully justified at that cost.
Pat, this is a really good example of your take on the psychology of once you've drafted a guy a bunch, you can talk yourself into him. I mean, he said he's taken a lot of Odell and he just
now he's into Odell. This is exactly the point.
This is exactly it.
I tried Odell once and I got hooked. I couldn't stop. Anyways, let's talk quickly some fallers. I think the Kupp discussion can be maybe shorter than I was expecting because there has been news now that Kupp is just day to day with this hamstring. He hasn't really fallen a ton in ADP. He's basically just fallen past Tyreek Hill.
Are you taking Kelsey over him is the question? Because I think that the smart move, right, is to take Hill, you take McCaffrey, but then do you take Kelsey? And for me, it's a no. I'm still taking.
I just took Kupp over Hill and McCaffrey in a Mastiff yesterday, and I'm still completely in on Kupp.
I wouldn't do that personally, but I don't think it's like egregious. And I'm not taking Kelsey over him. So
I wouldn't take him in everything. Like in all my best ball BBMs that I got 3s and 4s, I took Hill and McCaffrey and spread it out. But when I had to make a decision in a Mastiff, I took Kupp.
That's fair.
Just saying.
The upside, I mean, I get it for the upside for sure.
The only thing I'll say with Kupp is, so we had the day-to-day blurb, which I wrote, and he called him day-to-day. Then he basically still said he was week to week. Like he said he was day-to-day, but then like I think one of the tenors of comment.
Did you say day-to-days?
We hope he's back next week or something. I was like, you're still talking in terms of weeks and not days, but it's not a major injury. Like clearly he's going to be ready for week 1, and clearly it doesn't matter. He doesn't need to establish chemistry with anyone or anything like that. But I just do wonder. I mean, it's not his first injury. He had several major injuries. He's going to be 30 this season. I thought of a really horrible Galaxy Brain take, by the way. This one I do not believe in. But I was like, we all talk about like the running back usage, how, when you have like those historic usage seasons, how immediately falling out. Michael Thomas barely ever played since
the target cliff
season. Yeah, the target cliff. The target cliff. Cooper Kupp barely played since the.
Right, well, now we got to rename the episode the target cliff.
Exactly.
Yeah, look at Antonio Brown now.
He played 9 games last year and had was leading the NFL in targets. He was right on his
efficiency was cratering, and then he got hurt. Is what I'm saying.
No,
it was Pat's saying that's bad. Ben.
Yeah, it's bad.
He was still good in efficiency. It's just not as otherworldly.
No,
he was pacing for 140.
Then.
He was pacing for 140 plus catches last year. He's played 30 games with Matthew Stafford, and his 30 game pace is over 150 catches on a 17 game basis with Matthew Stafford. Including the playoffs and everything else. To
be clear, I don't believe this take, but I did think it was funny. I was like, man, Michael Tom and Cooper Kupp not really liking playing football after the historic
Too many catches.
Too many catches.
The cliff, it's here. Sorry.
No, you're good. But on that note, I just wrote about this for Stealing Signals the other day. He in his 30 games with Stafford has paced for over 150 catches on a 17-game basis. Justin Jefferson led the league last year with 128. Tyreek Hill was second with 119. And Kupp was on that pace last year as well. Like, if I'm concerned about the injury, when I'm saying I took him in that Mastiff, I'm not concerned about the injury. I'm very much concerned about the injury. But I do think if Cooper Kupp is healthy, his range of outcomes is higher than – I think it's in the tier with Jefferson and Chase.
I do too.
Gretch. Yeah, sorry, Pat. I'm not concerned about him being out there week 1, but I'm just concerned about the injury and that it's becoming the latest in a line of injuries. Maybe not a long line of injuries, but he's a guy who's 30. He's got injuries on his resume now.
Yeah,
for sure.
Also, when you're comparing him to Christian McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill, I think those guys' stealing cases are also insane. So that's just where I'm I kind of want to follow the market here. And if the market is dropping him, I want pretty equal exposure to those guys. I do see the argument for Kupp, maybe having a higher ultimate ceiling than those two. But man, Christian McCaffrey can, go for 1,000 again this year. That's in the range of outcomes. Tyreek Hill could definitely lead the league targets.
I don't think it is for McCaffrey this year. I'll say that pretty definitively because the way that they use Mitchell and the other options they have in the passing game, I don't think 1,000 is anywhere near his range.
You want to talk about a guy?
I think he's going to have a great year.
Gretch, just say you want to talk about a guy who doesn't play football. Eli Mitchell.
Christian McCaffrey.
Well, that's it.
Elijah Mitchell.
Sorry.
It's funny you mention that because the 49ers just on The Athletic, they just put out an article that was can McCaffrey get to 1,000? But I tend to agree that I'm a little bit more nervous about McCaffrey's workload because they're going to be a good team and they're just not going to they have so much more to play for than I think. Pat, was it you that was saying Mike Evans was just going to be the whole point of the Buccaneer season is to get Mike Evans to 1,000 yards
I think we're all saying that, but that's literally the entire point of the season.
That is not the way the 49ers are going to be playing this season. They're going to be resting McCaffrey if anything. Before this hamstring thing, I was taking Kupp heavily, essentially every time out of the 103 or the 104, I was taking Kupp, and then he was often there. Well, not often, but sometimes there at the 105. I was intentionally, without sacrificing Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase shares, trying to get overweight on Kupp. This was also during the Tyreek hit a guy on a boat period, so I figured especially confident in that. But now, right, so my take is in the context of that being my portfolio. Now I'm happy to take Kupp whenever he's at 5, but I'm kind of reversing it now that the market's flipped. I'm sure. Now at 3, I'll take Hill and then I take McCaffrey 4 usually, and then Kupp at 5.
Yeah. I mean, all I'll say on McCaffrey is he had 1,900 yards from scrimmage last year. Kupp's best season ever. He had 1,940. So, and that was also a season he got traded in the middle of the season. And the first game with the 49ers, barely played at all and still got to 1,900 total yards. So, I don't know.
CMC not playing, as Gretchen and I were joking about, he played last year. He came very close, several times. He was on the highway when the tire was still going, but it was about to come off. If the game didn't end soon. Yeah. He played hurt at the end of the year.
He did. I am taking some CMC.
The target.
He's reaching the target clip for sure.
He's got the target clip issue.
It's a thing. It's officially a thing.
It's a thing. Okay, let's move on to Dobbins. This one's it's kind of weird. So let's break it down. He's down 7 spots in ADP. The third biggest faller on this list. He's maybe injured. He's maybe holding in, but at the same time, there's all these quotes that he's hugging the owner whenever he sees him on the field. He's hugging the general manager. There's all these quotes about him like
he's talking
hugging
to
everybody. Yeah, so it's like a very pleasant hold in. I don't think he's actually injured. I did pull up this Twitter screenshot. You can check out Aaron Wilson _NFL. I think he's.
Is he doing a 1-arm push-up right there? Look at him. He looks.
Yeah. There's also a clip. I would pull it up on video, but there's a clip of him like dragging this like weighted sled and then like sprinting with it attached to him. Like he does not look like injured in these workout clips from July.
Best shape of his life. I mean, you got workout warrior.
I got him in the 7th round of a Mastiff the other day. I did think about it because I'm like, this is a tournament that is it like it's like a 50-50 the way they structured it. So you don't want to take on a ton of risk, but I'm like, it's a 7th round. This dude could be awesome. I don't know. I think, and you can regularly get him in the 7th round on DraftKings. So, and you can like we did a draft, Best Ball Mania draft. We almost got him in the 7th round of that draft when I was on the Rotoworld football show. So, I mean, I was a little bit underweight because in the 5th round, the 5-6 turn, I kind of want to be grabbing receivers there a decent amount. I have been aggressively drafting Dobbins recently to try to get overweight during this period. I honestly think it's going to be one of the big reasons to have drafted in this like late July, early August period. The Dobbins, who does not really appear to be injured, and it's clearly contract related. And the Ravens are like being totally like, this is the most congenial hold-in I've ever seen. Like everyone's going to like dinner parties and hanging out.
I wonder if the Ravens don't even care that he's not like maybe they don't even want a guy with his injury history to be practicing right now, like that kind of thing. And it seems like everyone involved, like the backslapping, like they know like some incentives are just going to be added to his deal or something. And for some reason they can't sign on the dotted line yet, but it doesn't seem like a lot to be genuinely concerned about.
It could. Well, I mean, I do think what you just sort of hit on is probably part of it. I do think some of these teams are like, look, we don't need running backs to practice at August 7th. Like later in Adrian Peterson's career, he would not play. He was like one of the first backs that would not play in the preseason, and they would give him a really light load and then say, hey, week 1, you show up and be ready. You're Adrian Peterson. You can get your body ready. We're not going to give you any more hits. Your whole job is to try to hold up to a massive amount of hits over the course of the regular season. We're not going to give you any more in camp. We don't want to. And Dobbins with the injury history, like it seems like that's what they're saying. Like Ravens are very in on analytics and everything organizationally. I would expect someone smart in their building is like, let's not have J.K. Dobbins do a lot in August. Like, why would we?
Yeah, he also tore his ACL in – sorry, Pat. He did tear his ACL in the preseason when he got injured in 2021. Right. So I think that's part of it maybe for him too. He's like, hey, if I'm not getting a contract, like I'm just not going to play in the preseason. Maybe the team's just like, that's reasonable. Like
you do you, man.
Dumb. Yeah.
Yeah.
Harbaugh's a little annoyed. And some of his quotes are like, yeah, I mean, it's like definitely be better if he was out there. But like, I don't know. I mean, the consigliere is calling it a hug-in.
That was pretty good. The hug-in.
That's beautiful.
Players are always innovating.
Yeah. I will say it is like, I do get the thing about him like not playing. It doesn't matter if running backs aren't playing. Like maybe it's not as important as wide receivers getting reps in with Lamar, but it is a completely new offense that in theory is going to use running backs way differently than it has in the past in Baltimore. I don't know how much weight to put on that, but like if he's not, if this is like one of those hold-ins where he's like not out there until, I don't know, August 31st or whatever, like that would concern me like a little bit. But at his price, like
there is added risk for sure.
Yeah.
The market is paying you to not worry about it though. Like a lot. They're paying you like 2 rounds. Like this dude was going in the mid-5th on DraftKings and now he's in the mid-7th. Like that's
and he's clearly the most talented running back. That's something else. I mean, like he's a lot younger than Gus Edwards. One of the things that Pat and I talked about on the ship chasing recently, but I'm way more concerned about Gus Edwards coming back and getting back to form. Dobbins is 24, Edwards is 28. Like Dobbins is their and Dobbins was a lot better the last couple of years. 6.0, 5.7 yards per carry. Edwards was 5.0 last year in his small sample, which is good, but those are different scales, right? And Lamar obviously influences those things. Dobbins has 6.0 yards per carry potential. Like he's their most talented back. He's really, really good at football.
For sure.
I will say, strategy tip, if you want to draft any of these players that are injured, go to DraftKings because they put that little red out symbol next to their names, and that causes the market to be like crazy reactive to these injuries. Like Garrett Wilson, I think, is listed as like questionable in DraftKings now because he has a mild low ankle sprain, and now he drops to like the end of the second round. So the DraftKings like reaction to this, the red injured symbol is a pretty good way to make a profit. Yeah, it's great. Let's move on here to Elijah Mitchell. We could, we'll have some more time. We can maybe hit on some of these other followers as well, but he is kind of an interesting one. There's a couple things going on with him. He's down just a couple spots, but one, he has this abdominal strain or adductor strain that should keep him out for a week. And then second, Pat, I was listening to the Rotoworld show where Rob Guerrera, I believe he's a beat writer for the 49ers, he talked about how Elijah Mitchell's roster spot is maybe not as secure as people think. And that was even before the injury, I think. I think that was before the abdominal strain. So, yeah, curious, like what I was shocked when I was listening to the podcast and heard that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that is the case, but I do think it could be the case where he was saying something else, basically, that he's the kind of guy that might be dead, like Kyle Shanahan, basically. So maybe off the roster and by another name, basically. But like, we cannot count on this guy anymore. Like we got Jordan Mason, we got TDP. I'm sure we got some other guys.
He's a little emotional to me, doesn't he?
He's very
emotional.
He's very, very, very emotional. Like not a joke. Like he trades up for people. Like he'll make like dramatic trade ups and then like be off of them like 3 months later. It happens like almost every year. Like he'll trade up for a receiver and then be off of them for like over a year. He isn't a very emotional coach.
He was out on Ayuk. Ayuk had to like.
I know it was insane.
Blocker.
Ayuk and like before there was Ayuk, there was Dante Pettis, who he traded like way the hell up for, and then was out on him like totally immediately. I guess the league has shown that decision was
Trey
correct.
Sermon, TDP, like those are, I mean, a lot of capital on those backs and not using them.
Yeah.
Maybe what Rob was kind of getting at there is just that the vibe is that Shanny's not into Elijah because I can't see any way he doesn't make the team.
Well, is Jordan Mason the next man up? Like Jordan Mason's a good
hype on Jordan Mason. Yeah, they were hyping Jordan Mason. I think on that pod he mentioned Jordan Mason, but I've also read stuff in The Athletic about Jordan Mason looking really good. I also read today about Tyrion Davis-Price, apparently played last season at 215 and shed a bunch of fat, but now weighs 228.
Yeah, I saw that too. I was like, did they make a typo? Was it supposed to be the other way around? Or?
They're implying that he put on like potentially
30 pounds of weight.
I was going to say 30 pounds of muscle.
Because it's like he cut, like say he's cut 7 pounds of fat to get down to 208, but now he weighs 228.
This is literally those gifs where there's like all the math equations in the background. We're all trying to figure out how much muscle he just put on. Like what?
But the one dude, I forget who it was. I think it was skill position coach for the 49ers was like, it's honestly like incredible how much better he's gotten. So not that he's that big, like it's unlikely he's going to make an impact this year, but you don't want to hear that if you've drafted a bunch of Elijah Mitchell, which I have. I've cooled off on Elijah Mitchell quite a bit because with all these guys where it's like, hey, at least I know he's the locked in number 2. As soon as I hear like multiple guys who might challenge him as the locked in number 2, then I'm going to be.
And he's already hurt. It's just like, how is this guy hurt again?
Yeah, he's already hurt.
It's hard to play football. I mean, I'm not trying to like, obviously, but like, how on planet Earth is Elijah Mitchell hurt again? Like, it makes absolutely no sense.
That was amazing. Yeah. For some reason, that made me remember when you ran the 40 at the combine. Which is it's hard to play football.
Yeah, I didn't get hurt. I'll tell you that. I was wearing dress shoes too.
And you leaked at the end. You took a little.
I did. I wrecked the tackling dummies, I will say.
That was impressive. I remember watching that clip.
That was great.
So how far are you guys dropping Mitchell? Because I think for me, what feels right is he goes now ahead of Tank Bigsby, Jalen Warren, and Tyler Algier. I think I would drop him below Algier, but still ahead of Kendre, ahead of Roshan. Those guys have tons of concerns about their spot on the roster as well. That's probably what I'd do.
That's exactly where I have. I just pulled up the rankings on Legendary Upside. I dropped him behind Bigsby and Algier, but he's ahead of that next group. But honestly, I think I would take Jerome Ford ahead of him. Like I think
Jerome Ford should be going way higher. I think that's a situation where there's no buzz. They're bringing in a veteran running back. They sat him for the Hall of Fame game and played Felton and whatever the other guy is a bunch of snaps. Like I think Ford is like so clearly the number 2, and the market hasn't reacted quick enough on that one. I don't think.
Maybe I'll move Ford up instead of.
I still can't believe they haven't signed anybody, but like you said, it seems like they genuinely like Jerry Ford and aren't going to do that, and that he is locked in.
Yeah, they seem pretty into him.
How about a drum beat? That was a weird drum beat too. That drum beat started in like February. Like, oh, okay, wow.
That was like a Matthew. Wasn't that like a Matthew Berry? Like he snuck a little line into some article, and then
you're right,
that's just
it was a combine rumor.
But then when you go look at his last year, because he played on special teams, he was actually active for 13 games last year and was basically not used on offense. So he's one of those guys that you don't really have a good reason for why they didn't mix him in because he was active.
And
I guess it just
like wasn't good, so that has been a red flag for me with Jerome Ford. Where if a coaching staff really loves a player, they force themselves onto the field like somehow, and he just
yeah. Although we did see this with Damian Harris, right? Like they completely redshirted him, and then we got buzz that he was going to be involved as a second-year player, and then he was.
I mean, if they think of it like the Kareem Hunt is like a very specific role, right, then I guess it makes some sense. But yeah, 13 games last year, he got 8 offensive touches, and he was active for 13 games. That's weird, right?
That is weird.
Very weird. I was so skeptical of him for a while, Gretch, because of that. I'm just like, what is this Jerome Ford thing? Like, they're going to sign Fournette. They're going to sign Kenyon Drake. They're going to sign somebody, right? Like, I'm not buying this guy that gave 8 carries to last year for 12 yards as some like locked in RB2. But now I think I just have to believe it, right? Like, I guess it's still possible they could bring in Fournette. Sure, it's theoretically possible. But there's been absolutely zero buzz. I think they feel pretty confident.
The whole game thing, to your point, was sort of the last straw. I'm with you guys. I think you got to move him up at this point. They didn't even use him in the Hall of Fame game. Like, they are locking him into a role for sure.
Yeah. Let's talk a couple other interesting fallers here. I think the Patriots situation is interesting to talk about as well. Tyquan Thornton is down pretty steeply here, down about a round and a half on news that I think for a while people were projecting him to sort of be a starter for the Patriots, before Parker got the extension, before they brought in Juju. Now the buzz coming out of Patriots camp is that he's competing with Kendrick Bourne and Demario Douglas for a role in 11 personnel, and he has no chance at being sort of a full-time starter on the team. So I'm just curious. I know some people were high on Thornton as a potential year 2 breakout. Is anyone still are there reasons to draft him? Because he's to be honest completely off my board. I'm not even considering him now. But does anyone want to make a case for?
I took him a decent amount earlier. I'm completely not taking him now on these concerns, in part because I have more exposure than I'd like to have at this point. But I took him a decent amount earlier because I thought the offense could turn around. I liked the late backstack potential. I took too much Mac Jones early as well. And he felt like the clearest upside path in the wide receiver room. I think we know Devontae Parker's not a huge upside guy. He's going to be like a decent, and in basketball, those players can help you, like a decent producer. Hopefully you get some spike weeks out of him, going to run some routes. He was pretty solid last year when you look at his, peripherals and everything, but not going to be like a huge breakout. The idea for me earlier in the offseason was that Thornton could be the one guy in this passing game that had the potential to sort of consolidate. Second round rookie pick last year. Draft pick last year, like NFL pick, and has the speed and a decent production profile in college that, he could be a guy that actually was a breakout for them if their passing game took a step forward with Bill O'Brien, and he was like the key part of that step forward. But it's not sounding great in August.
It does concern me, Pat. I'd be curious to get your thoughts because the thing with training camp is that a lot of it is positive. You hear positive stuff, or you don't hear that much stuff where you hear about injuries, but you don't tend to hear this guy ain't it. That's not really what training camp is for.
That's what you're hearing. Yeah.
But today in The Athletic, the headline. So it's like a bullet point thing here. And bullet point number 6. So this is by Chad Graff of The Athletic. Bullet point number 6 is it doesn't look like Tyquan Thornton is breaking out. And then goes on to talk about how he's struggled. It's been a slow start. Of the team's top 6 receivers, he was the only one who hadn't caught a pass in 11-on-11 drills through the first 6 practices. Then he seemed to suffer an injury that kept him off the field since then. Like, this seems very bad. I'm not, and then, you know, again, we're used to parsing hype, not like this dude's done.
No, I know. And you say the fact that it's going back to the spring is this weird, like, and even that applies to not just rookies, but like any young player. Like, if they miss a lot of the offseason, even if it's for like very legitimate reasons, that seems to, no matter what, like sour the coaching staff somehow. There was someone had resurfaced a tweet like a day or two ago where like the receiver coach was basically like, no, Tyquan Thornton's still good. But all he did was like talk about him being fast. Like, didn't talk about him like he didn't like say anything really like convincing. He's very fast, very, very fast. And
yeah,
was basically
which like super late in the best ball draft. Like, okay, well maybe they use him on an end around in the red zone or something. Like maybe he scores a touchdown at some point. It
seemed like the Pats, sent someone out there to like, we got to like try to change the Tyquan Thornton narrative a little bit, and he's just like, he's very fast.
He's still fast, guys.
Yeah, he's still fast.
I think with Thornton too, like you want to like revisit what the bet was, you know, like, so Thornton was a bet on second round draft capital, routes, and speed. And so like he still technically was a second round pick, but the team's not treating him like that anymore. The speed is the only part of this thesis.
He's fast. He's still fast.
He's still fast.
That's what he has.
Yeah. He wasn't efficient at all as a rookie. The team now seems pretty like reluctant to really give him much of a role. The routes look, I mean, you cannot say that he has routes. Like routes are now a full-blown question mark. So it's just down to speed.
Yeah, wow. It's another tweet from Doug Kyde, or this was from yesterday. Tyquan Thornton's lack of physicality was evident at times. That sounds good.
Yeah. Well, the thing you do have going for you with the Tyquan bet is that Belichick does have a really good track record of hitting on sort of wide receivers. So you still have that to go back on. But
that lack of physicality thing, wasn't that a N'Keal Harry thing? Like, so sometimes do you wonder these beats get some of their like buzzwords or their notes on players from the coaches? Like the coaches telling him, you know, on the sideline, like, yeah, we're worried about Thornton's physicality. And then we end up seeing that in a tweet where he's like, hey, his lack of physicality was evident. That was, I feel like one of the things we heard about N'Keal Harry early on was that he was not physical enough. It might be the Patriots kind of way of, you know, we're out on this dude. Like even more so than like he's not doing what we need him to do physically.
Yeah, that's obviously bad. To me, the biggest red flag was like, I think this was maybe last Thursday or something. It was reported that Juju appeared to be ahead of him in 2 wide receiver sets. That means Juju as an outside wide receiver is more trusted than you, which is a huge red flag.
We're talking huge.
Huge.
We're going.
I mean, they're hyping up everyone.
Not huge.
Like, Kendrick Bourne, who the team hated and the beat was like so down on last year, they're hyping up Kendrick Bourne. They're hyping up this 6th-round rookie that no one's heard of, and like, there's one guy that's not getting positive reviews, and everyone else is getting positive reviews. So
yeah.
Well,
Mike Gesicki's getting very negative reviews as well.
Yeah. See, Crane hit on a really interesting point too. Like it's not always noteworthy when someone gets praised because you're kind of expecting that this time of year. It is very noteworthy when they just can't think of anything nice to say, and so they
and then they still don't say anything at all.
Instead of not saying anything at all, they say something nice.
They say the bad things.
Yeah.
So you guys are saying all of my Mac Jones backstacks have to be Hunter Henry now because I was
Hunter Henry backstacks are.
Dude, you gotta open your third eye to Devontae Parker. I hate that.
My eyes open. I mean, he's gonna run the route.
He's running all the routes, and hey, look at his box scores last year. You're going to see 2 massive games.
My computer turned itself off when I Googled Devontae Parker ESPN game log.
There's another guy that doesn't play a lot of football. Like, he stayed healthy last year, but, I mean, good luck. He's going to make it through. Actually, he didn't. He played 13 games last year. He's played 16 games once in his career. Good luck.
Hey,
Sounds like
13
Cooper
games.
Kupp.
Yeah.
Sounds like Cooper Kupp. Am I right?
The thing about Devontae Parker is he will never hit the target cliff. It's actually impossible for
It's
him.
true.
To never
He'll never hit
Yeah.
the target clip.
Or maybe he did that one season in Miami where he had 1,200
Fitzpatrick
yards.
ruined him. Fitzpatrick
He hit-
screwed him and
He hit
ruined
the
his
target
career.
cliff. He hit the target cliff.
Ugh.
To be clear, I do not believe in the target cliff.
I love the target cliff.
I have to emphasize this.
Kadarius Toney, another guy on this list who will probably never hit the target cliff. He doesn't
I
hit
don't
enough
think he's hitting the
routes.
target. Now, Pat,
Yeah.
did he hit the target cliff in a single game? Is there a single game target cliff?
Yeah, he did. You're right. The 15 target game or whatever that he had early for the Giants 2 years ago. That was the target
Ooh.
cliff for Toney.
Interesting.
It's usually in a season, but it can happen in a game.
Wow.
Just too much pressure on his lower body, and he's never been the same after that. I think it wasn't genuinely like a 17 target game or something.
I'm pulling it up. He had a 13 target game and then a 12 target game later in the same year.
Wow,
I mean,
crazy.
that's a career ender.
Yeah, that's a career. I mean, it honestly might have been a career.
It might have been.
With Toney, like the way he's able to like move his body in ways that no other human does, like maybe don't. Maybe
I know. I think
maybe you move it in a normal way.
But kidding aside, that I really do think that has to be it. He's placing like force on his joints that just like is not natural.
yeah, just run
It's actually
normal.
kind of like when you
Try-
watch him move. When you watch him move, it's almost impressive that he doesn't get hurt more. Like I think if I tried to do any of the moves that Toney did, like my bones would literally be like popping out of my skin.
Well, his are too.
Yeah.
Well,
There's that highlight they always show is him scoring that TD on the sideline where he hopped into the end zone and it actually wasn't hurt, but like
that was bad
like,
karma.
Yeah, like dude,
was
don't do
bad
that.
karma.
Like
Don't do that.
everyone watching that was like, "Oh, he's hurt again," and then he wasn't hurt. It was like, "Okay, but you're hurt 2 seconds later." So I mean,
He's literally tempting fate. Like, oh no, am I hurt again?
Remember when Justin Jefferson did that?
Like, yeah,
That was
you
bad.
just tore your knee, dude.
so my question on Toney is, why is he still going at 95, and how has he not fallen to like 120? Like, he's not.
I'm taking him I'm one of the guys. I'm taking him.
at 90, you're taking a 95.
I'm willing to take him at 95. It's correlated. I'm taking him correlated, but all right, you guys hate.
Who
this
were they
one.
playing in Week 17? I'm sure I'm the only one.
The
on the pod
Bengals.
who doesn't
The Bengals,
know.
my friend.
Oh my god.
That's part of the reason why, because you got
Holy
Burrow. So here's the thing: Burrow and Mahomes are on that side of the board. So that's like in the spot where you're looking to be taking Toney anyway. And then, right, I have that right, don't I? I'm not reaching for Toney. Tell me I'm not reaching for Toney.
95 is late 8.
Late 8.
Right?
Okay, yeah.
Right?
So the 8-9 turn. Yeah. So that's he's set up for the correlation pick. And then you just think about like, late season upside, spike weeks hitting your lineup at that 8-9 price. That's probably like your wide receiver 5. Like that's actually kind of what you're looking for, So he fits your builds, I think, so much more logically than he did when he was at that 6-7 turn. That was like a core piece, like a guy you need contributing more regularly. Again, this goes to like how I tend to build teams where I'm often 4 wide receivers deep before I take Toney. But I just think I can kind of carry Toney through a few weeks of him not playing at all. And then there's going to be some inconsistency.
He'll be there to not play later as well, which will be helpful.
Yeah, that's true. I'll carry him through those first few weeks when he doesn't play until the later.
He's going to be on the Houston Texans then, by the way.
But look, I mean, if you want to talk about pick 120, right? I mean, Jameson Williams goes at pick 102 and has gotten very poor reviews in training camp. Dan Campbell coming out and saying, like, I just don't think his hands are like that good. He's just got bad hands. So, oh well. Like that seems bad.
That's not good. No, he should be falling.
He's suspended for 6 games. He has 1 career reception. He has 1 career reception. And we're still taking him at 102. I do think, like, relative to Jameson Williams, Toney makes a lot of sense. And especially because you're able to correlate him with either Burrow or.
But those aren't your only 2 options. You could take a running.
I was going to say, I agree. If you compare every pick with Jameson Williams, it's a good argument to make that pick. But
yeah, sure. But he's sort of right. It's a similar play. It's a similar play where you're now. Yeah, maybe he's just massively overpriced.
Yeah.
And I'm talking myself into Toney.
Here's the other pick in this range that I could argue is the other worst pick in this range, and he's better than that.
But I'm just like, all right. It's like a pure upside play, and I know I'm missing games. I'm missing fewer than 6 games probably, and I think he has more upside. So I'm just like, so yeah. But you're right, Jameson Williams probably just a terrible pick, and I shouldn't take Toney either.
Well, that's a good way to.
That's my thought on Toney. Is
close things out.
I feel like he's outside the wide receiver window, and I want to be pivoting to receivers running backs if I'm thinking Toney. Like I've now thought, like I see there's upside pass for him, but I've now gotten to the point where I'm like, I don't want to be trusting him anywhere near this ADP. Basically,
were you taking any at all? Because that's part of it for me too. Is I had a massive. I
had not had that first drag of a Kadarius Toney cigarette yet. I have not. I think I've taken him a couple times, but no, not a lot. Correlated a couple times.
Yeah, I'd taken him. I think my one. I had like 2 shares, but one was in a Mastiff. And I was like, God damn it!
That was a big hit of Kadarius Toney.
Yeah, because I was getting nervous. Like,
what do those Mastiffs cost again?
That costs $1,000. So, yeah, it's not. I don't feel good about it. But he was making me nervous. Like, I had this incredibly hard stance against Kadarius Toney, but the upside, if he stayed healthy, this was before he got hurt, but if he stayed healthy and they were talking him up as the number one wide receiver, like, I know he can earn targets at a very high rate in any given game. Like, he was someone I was like, this dude could bury me. So now that I can get him still correlated at the 8-9 turn, I'm just trying to mix him in because I do think there are late season scenarios where it's like you kind of needed Toney.
I think that's definitely fair. And when you're drafting 7,000 teams like Pat Kerrane, you should probably find ways to mix him in. But for everyone else,
yeah, I also think that if we're saying the way Justyn Ross makes the team is Toney gets stashed in IR, I think we're gonna get that news cycle, and he's gonna drop 2 more rounds, Pat. So that's what I'm like. DraftKings, he's dropped way more than he has an Underdog. I will say DraftKings Underdog is way less reactive to DraftKings, but I think sometimes like in a bad way. Like Toney has dropped like so slowly from where he was. But I'm like, guys, I don't get it. Like it should be a big drop like pretty quickly, which DraftKings reflected. Underdog has not reflected that. So I'm just waiting more. Like I took him at like 115 one time on Underdog where he fell a ton. I'm kind of waiting. I'm waiting for that.
Get off the ADP. Like I know ADP, like, oh, we got to take ADP value and stuff. Like, but this is not the time just to like blindly scoop ADP value. You do want to be like, I was making fun of, some of the falls was like Pacheco goes on pup and everyone like freaked out. So like, we don't want to just like chase our tail on this stuff. But when material things happen, we do want to be willing to like fade a dude, like to skip out on that sweet ADP value because things are changing.
Hound till you die. That's the only way to go. Crane, what's the timer on the Mastiff? Is it still only 30 seconds?
So I haven't been able to get any fast Mastiffs in there. I did mine slow.
All right, good. I feel like you should.
I think we will do a fast Mastiff.
We are
on the show as we're wrapping up here.
A Fastiff
coming up, I think. Fastiff. Maybe next week. Maybe in 3 weeks. We'll figure it out. But anyways, that was good. 30 minutes on the Chiefs wide receivers, 30 minutes on the Giants wide receivers, and 30 minutes.
I made Sam put Toney back on the agenda, Pat, for you.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I tried to remove him
never
from the
once
chart.
been on a podcast where we did not discuss Kadarius Toney for a minimum of 15 minutes. And he even, of course, we all knew that the Justyn Ross was just that was like a backdoor to get Toney talk in there, and then we still had Toney on the agenda anyway. So
you gotta double dip with Toney in every show.
It hurts to be the Toney truther. I think I'm gonna have to be out.
That was interesting, Pat. Doesn't seem like the Pat I've come to know.
Well, I think Sam's right about his fall. I'm gonna just 10-11 turn. I'm gonna be in a 10-11 turn though, guys.
Yeah, stop holding him up.
After I myself have done this 5 to 6 times, I noticed it became very sensible, and I'm going to keep doing it.
Oh man! All right, Pat, what do we have going on Rotoworld? What's in the works?
Trying to do some blurbs, that kind of things of that nature. Preseason is finally beginning this week. So that'll be interesting. We'll try not to overreact to. That's the thing about the preseason. It's like knowing what, even more than training camp, has become hard to know what to actually react to, since like all 32 teams now basically approach the preseason differently. Some teams will genuinely play their starters way fewer than they used to, and just trying to parse the preseason. We're gonna have a lot of preseason week 1 follow-up content next week. I'm trying to do like kind of a canned article, like not a very creative concept, but I am working on ranking the fantasy offenses, and so I'm hoping that's up by the end of the week. So yeah, just keep it locked to the site, keep it locked to RotoPat on X. And yeah, that's what
I've never heard anyone do that. That's the first X promotional thing I've ever heard.
That's what we got going right now. I'm really hoping they fight, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I reposted on X this morning.
I know. Gosh.
I hope Elon avoids the pup list before that.
I know. I think Elon's not hoping to avoid the pup list. I think he's actually demanding they find a reason to get him on the pup list.
So, Elon not in the best shape of his life.
No.
And the reports, the beat is not really high.
And just in case people don't know what we're talking about, it's 2 of the richest people in the world trying to arrange a cage match. Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. And one of them is undergoing an MRI. I wish any of this were fake, but it's all true. So yeah, there you go. Yeah. Great way to end the show.
As reported by the Wall Street Journal. Anyways,
this is not a simulation.
Upside.
This is a real life.
This is why we are stacking Jalin Hyatt with Matthew Stafford in real life. That's a simulation.
This does feel pretty simulation-y.
Pat, what do we got going on at Legendary Upside?
I teased an article that I had out last week. That was a fun little short article. And hey, if you sign up at legendaryupside.com, you can also hear that narrated as a podcast. If you sign up, it's $10 a month, $99 for the year, but yearly sub will get you a $50 underdog credit if you fill out a form that you can find on the homepage of legendaryupside.com.
Yeah, that can get you a full 1/10 of a Mastiff right there. So that's a pretty good deal.
Or 2 BBMs,
They are 2 BBMs.
2 fours. 2 fours.
Yeah, 2 fours. Gretch, what do we got going on in Stealing Signals?
I'm about to finish the off-season Stealing Signals post, which was team by team deep dives, listing out the signals and the noise and the key stats and breakdowns for each. Rankings, tiered targets and fades. Lot of stuff coming. I don't know. I had a whole list over there. So curious to go. Yeah.
Awesome stuff. We'll be back next week. I think 3 or 4 more ADP chasings left to close out the season. We'll have Leone on at some point. We'll be doing a massive draft, and we'll be finally going over our ADP value game at some point to close out the year, which I've definitely been diligently tracking and definitely have those all written down somewhere.
Do we take that to the wire, or are we calling like a show where it has to come in by?
We'll figure it out. I definitely have a plan for it. Don't
it's like,
don't
I don't
question
know
that.
who our picks are, Pat.
Anyways, fun show, guys. We'll see you here next week.